Hello and welcome to the News Desk. This is Season 4, Episode 23. We're recording on June 22nd, 2022, and I'm Chris Stafford. And with me, as always, is Nancy Gillan. Well, not with me here in the studio. I'm in Middleburg, Virginia, as always, and the capital of the horse world is one of the things we call it. It's paradise is another word for it. And Nancy, you're not quite in paradise. You're in Potter's Bar, aren't you?
Finsbury Park, but I will be going to Potter's Bar tonight to pick up my car to drive to Leeds. So, and I've been in Birmingham today, so I'm all over the place.
Commonwealth Games being in Birmingham this summer, of course. So you went up there for, was it a press conference? What was it?
So it was the BBC, because they are like the host country broadcaster. They did it for the Women's Euros too, but they did like a media launch where they announced the presenters and like the former athletes who will be doing their coverage, and then they have like a little panel discussion, and then you've got interview time with some of the people. So I interviewed Gabby Logan, Denise Lewis, Ellie Simmons, and Aima Asgabe, who's one of the netball players who won gold with England at the 2018 Commonwealth Games. So, yeah, that was really fun. It was really good to hear what the BBC's plans are, and to talk to people about the games. And like a lot of the people involved, like the presenters or the athletes, are from Birmingham themselves, so they're all like massively excited to have such a big multi-sport competition coming over here. And yeah, it's going to be the Euros finish and then the Commonwealth Games start, so it's going to be, just made me really excited for the next 6 weeks.
Yes, what a buzz all over England when it comes to women's sports. You mentioned Ellie Simmons there, Nancy, and I don't know if you ever listened to Desert Island Discs on BBC Radio 4, but she was a guest this past week, and it was
I didn't know that.
Yeah, it was a lovely interview with her. Yeah, she's quite a bubbly character, isn't she?
Yeah, she is, and I'm sure she said it because she has now retired, so she's like... doing punditry and kind of presenting, and then she's also been on the organising committee board. So yeah, she's talking about how different it is to be an athlete at games compared to like being on the organising committee. It's, you've got to like think about so much more. You don't just turn up at the time that someone tells you to. So yeah, that was really interesting, and yeah, she's a great character.
Yeah, I do recommend that if anyone is interested in the Ellie Simmons interview. BBC Radio 4, it's on the Sounds app, and just look for Desert Island Discs. It was last week's episode. All right, we are going to kick off this week with what has become a major news dominating the news cycle, and will continue. I think we've just seen the beginning of this now, with a couple of sports that have made a radical decision, some would say, to the transgender debate. And this was with swimming, that this week they announced, the Swimming International Federation, that is, announced they're going to restrict transgender women from elite swimming competition. This is a red hot potato debate, isn't it, Nancy? And this is quite a drastic decision, some would say, but it's a very tough one. I mean, this is a sea of controversy, isn't it?
It is, I think, an absolute minefield. And I think it was always kind of like who was going to go first with it, because I think we discussed it months ago when it happened, but the IOC essentially changed their transgender regulations, which were the same for all international federations, to basically say every international federation comes up with their own decision. So then I think a lot of federations were left like floundering, kind of under pressure. I'm not that surprised that FINA, the swimming governing body, has gone first, because I think the collegiate swimmer Leah Thomas has put swimming at the forefront of the debate, essentially. So I'm not surprised they've moved first, and it seems to have had a bit of a snowball effect. Though I think Rugby League also announced a similar kind of blanket ban almost, and yeah, I don't think it's necessarily going to be the first governing body to do this, or at least maybe not necessarily the same as what FINA have done, but to announce their regulations on transgender athletes. So it's going to be a topic that isn't going away at all. And yeah, I think part of it is quite interesting. The establishment of an open category. I would just be quite interested to kind of see the logistics of that and how that's, they go about kind of putting that into place. So yeah, it has taken up a lot of the conversation recently, hasn't it?
Yeah, it really has. And you mentioned rugby league there has also gone the same way as rugby union, because World Rugby had already announced their decision about transgender men playing with women. And cycling, I believe, is also looking into it now. They're currently reviewing their rules on transgender.
Yeah, and I think it's been, again, like federations that have had, I suppose, kind of athletes who have been in the limelight. So I think, was it Emily Bridges was the cyclist who there was a bit of a kind of, I think she was stopped from competing and then was allowed to compete, and there was a bit of confusion over her participation. So it does seem to be the governing bodies that are kind of directly affected by it. But yeah, I do think personally, in my own opinion, that the IOC has kind of put all the pressure on the international federations now. They did seem to criticise FINA's policy because they've urged like shifting the focus from testosterone levels and asked for evidence to prove if a performance advantage existed. So it does seem like they've kind of put it on the international federations and then kind of not, being a bit surprised when the federation has made a decision. So, I kind of would want to see more leadership from the IOC in this particular area because that is kind of their job as the, the global governing body for Olympic sport anyway.
Yes. Some would say, okay, well, that only covers Olympic sport. Where does it leave the rest? The rest, of course, would have to make their own decisions too. So, as you say, this is just the beginning. We've got 3 sports now that have followed this decision, and we'll have to see where it goes because it's as you say, it's such a difficult one. It's such a controversial one. It's a hot potato. Yes, it's based on science, their decision, and they're also taking into account female athletes as well, which is a voice that we haven't been hearing. We've been, we often hear, well, this is being that governing bodies are being transphobic, and I'm not sure they're being transphobic per se. They just want to create some level of fairness. Would you agree with that? I think because fairness, I also see it as being fair as everyone being able to compete in sport, which is why I think an all-out ban is in my opinion, is, I don't know, because I do think that you want to allow everyone. I think I read somewhere, I think there was a piece you sent me, which I'm sure you're including in the show notes from Stuff. Is it Zoe? Yeah,
I think
Zoe
one
George.
Of the voices she included in that article, it was a reminder that sport is a human right. And in that sense, I find it hard to follow a policy that will prevent someone from competing. So I think there is a way, there's got to be a way of finding a way to have fairness, but then also still allow transgender athletes to compete if they wish while maintaining that fairness. At the moment, no one seems to have cracked that solution, because if that solution was there, then we wouldn't be talking about this right now. But yeah, it's just something that sport is grappling with at the moment. And I know, maybe I'm being a bit idealistic and maybe that is impossible, but that's kind of what I hope this ends up as.
Yes, because I think swimming is going to create a new category, isn't it? So as to be inclusive of transgender men who have gone through, transgender women rather, who have gone through male puberty. So we will keep you posted. The story will continue, I'm sure, for months to come. Well, we're going to move on to another gender issue. I've put this second in our run list, Nancy, because it's a story that may not be new news to everybody, but it's an announcement as far as Dame Kelly Holmes is concerned, the British athlete. She came out as gay after 34 years and says, "I'm finally free." obviously very liberating for her. I totally relate to that, of course. But this is not something that was completely news to you.
Well, I'm not sure. I don't want to spread gossip. As in, I just kind of read the article and in my brain, it didn't register as a new news, I suppose. But no, it's great. It's absolutely great that she feels comfortable to openly talk about it. I think that's the key thing, isn't it? It's the openly talking about it and being, confident to be herself, I think. Is what's great. And when you do read that, she talks about kind of I suppose what being in the British Army, and that is a massive thing because that's an institution where it's in the past anyway, hopefully it has changed now, but you're not allowed to be gay. You're literally not allowed. So that obviously must have been very hard for her.
So she talks about that. She lived in fear of being found out.
Yeah, and that's such obviously such a horrible way to live. So I think now it's great that she is so confident and open to be who she wants to be. And yeah, just such a brilliant athlete as well. She's had such a successful career and stuff. And it's sad to think that during that time she was not being her true self, but it's great that she is now.
Yeah, just remind us can you off the top of your head remind us of, and our audience really, of her achievements, because she was a phenomenal athlete, as you say, now retired, but what an athlete.
Yeah, so she's probably one of my first memories of the Olympics, to be honest. So Athens 2004 Olympics, winning two gold medals in is it the 800 and I think the 1500 as well. Yeah, I just remember that, when I was younger, watching her on TV when those gold medals. So she's a very iconic British athlete, I think, especially for people of my generation, especially because it's kind of the first memory of British sporting success at the Olympics.
Well, good for her. And she's a Dame Kelly Holmes. Not everybody gets that title, so that's how highly the British regard Kelly Holmes. So well done, Kelly. I'm glad you're finally living free now, and as your true self. And well done. It takes some courage to come out. And I'm sorry it's been such a long time, but the rest of it will be easy, I'm sure, now for you. All right. That's our two gender topics for the start of this week's show. I want to move on to, we've got a couple of football stories. Not a lot this week, and usually for us, we don't have many, but we do have a new signing for OL Reign, which seems to be hauling in a lot of talent right now.
Yeah, so they've signed Jordyn Huitem. I never know how you say her surname. Is it Huitem?
Huitem?
Yes. I will go with that. So they've signed her, Canadian footballer, signed her from PSG until 2024, so a couple of years. And yeah, she's only 21, but she played 71 times for PSG. So, and also was quite a big part in that Olympic gold medal for Canada at the Tokyo Games. So yeah, at such a young age, she's already she's definitely one of kind of the best young talents around. And yeah, OL Reign making big signings. We spoke last week about Tobin Heath going over to the club, and they've got Kim Little for the summer. So yeah, definitely a team to keep an eye on. Yeah,
certainly is. Yeah. In a little bit of drama over there this past weekend. Did you see a certain Ms. Rapinoe got a red card?
I did. Yeah, I saw it was her first red card ever. And yeah, I know there's been a bit of unhappiness with the standard of the refereeing in the NWSL this season. And it's been the same over here for us in the WSL. It's definitely an area of women's football that is slightly lagging behind as the rest of the game gets more professional. So, but yeah, I didn't see the cliff of the red. So whether it was deserved or not, I don't know. I haven't been able to make a decision on that.
Well, we have another nice story, which I really enjoyed. This came from The Guardian, called How Women's Football Revolutionized the Game and Changed My Life. This is a really, really nice article by Suzanne Rack.
Yeah, so this is from a book that she's written, which I still need to get because it looks really good. So it's called A Women's Game, The Rise, Fall and Rise Again of Women's Football. So just kind of documenting the history of women's football. And yeah, so The Guardian have published an extract, and it is really, it's a really great read. It speaks about how when she was growing up, she became an Arsenal fan and she just loved playing football. And then kind of as she grew older and became, an adult woman, she felt like a lot more ostracized and kind of out of place within the sport. And then, it dips out of that personal account quite nicely into like the history of women's football and then back into her own experiences as a journalist. And yeah, there's bits that I really like. I think there's a particular bit, I don't know if I'm going to be able to find it, but when she says that it's something like even the act of playing football is a feminist act, just in like literally, just going out on a pitch and playing football. So yeah, it's a really great read, and I mean, I'm going to buy the book. So I haven't been paid to say this.
No, what I like about it, just reminds us all of the history of the sport, and how women were banned from playing football back in England by the Football Association, weren't they? I mean, the sport was banned for women. They could not play.
Yeah. Yeah. So many people aren't aware of that. It's such a big reason why when you look at the state of men and women's football in the UK, why the men's game is so ahead in terms of like finances and investment and fans. It's not because women can't play football. It's because literally for years and years and years, it was illegal to. Like that's why. And not enough people know that. And it's frustrating. It's frustrating that no one knows that because it's such an obvious reason why, women's football is a bit behind and it's catching up. But it was damaged so badly by those years. And we need more books like this to educate people about what happened.
It's true. Yeah, absolutely true. Yeah, so that's great. That story will be in the link to all of the stories that we cover, as usual, will be in the show notes at wissports.com. We're going to move on to basketball now, and we spoke of Megan Rapinoe. Well, her fiancé was making the news, Sue Bird. She announced her retirement, and she's considered really a true legend in the sport. I think she's now 41, isn't she, Nancy? So this doesn't come as a surprise. It was just the timing of it.
Yeah, I think it was always floated about, wasn't it, that she was going to retire soon. So yeah, basically retire at the end of the season. And I didn't realize that the end of the season is actually quite close because she has now played her. Oh, no, wait, I understand now because she's not. Sorry, for some reason I thought she was at New York Liberty, but she's not. She's at Seattle Storm because the article was saying that it was her last game in New York. I thought it was her last home game.
New York. No, correct.
So she went to New York and had a team and had a match and she was she's from New York, so that's why. That's confusing because when at home I was like, oh, she must play. No, that makes sense. Yeah. Anyway, so she's obviously going to have a long kind of goodbye tour. Every game she plays, like you said, she is an absolute legend. Not much basketball gets over here, particularly because it's not that popular, but like a lot of people know who Sue Bird is and that she's one of the best in women's basketball. So yeah, it's quite a big deal. And like maybe... Oh, how long is Megan Rapinoe gonna, is maybe she thinking of retirement too as well? I don't know.
You see, she's back on the roster now.
Yeah, she is.
The CONCACAF and those two friendlies against Colombia this month and next month. So this is all pre-World Cup, of course, next year. Will she be around for the World Cup? Another World Cup? Who knows? With so much talent, that there's a lot of women that are literally chomping at the bit and snapping at her heels because, there is so much choice on the roster there. So it will be interesting to see if she does want to play another World Cup and if she gets on the roster for next year. And this possibly delays the wedding. I think they've both got to be retired. I don't know if they both have to be retired, but maybe that's where they're waiting for them both to be retired before they actually go through with the wedding. But they've been together a number of years now. It will happen one day. So we'll keep you posted if we hear anything. All right. We're going to move on to gymnastics now. We haven't talked about this for a little while, but British Gymnastics came into the news some months ago with the allegations of abuse, and you've got an update on this, haven't you?
Yeah, so it's kind of I suppose I think it's almost a couple of years since this kind of we first started talking about this, because it followed off the back of Athlete A and all the USA Gymnastics Larry Nassar situation. I think it was Athlete A, the Netflix documentary, that started sparking gymnasts from all around the world to talk about abuse they'd suffered when they were younger. It was pretty prevalent over here. There were a lot of high-profile gymnasts speaking about it. So there was a review conducted by a barrister. They released the findings this week, and it is absolutely damning. It is very... I don't know if it's a 300-plus page review. I haven't read the whole thing, but I've read the news stories which kind of pick out the highlights, and just found that British Gymnastics allowed for a culture of physical and emotional abuse, failed to provide a safe environment for gymnasts, with children body shamed, belittled and abused. It's some of the very fine details about what happened to children, and like kind of punishing children and like essentially starving them and stuff like that. It's like really, really shocking. So, a lot of children then suffering from eating disorders and things like that as well. So, the article I was reading today was a CNN one who interviewed Claire Heaford, who was she competed with British Gymnastics in the 90s, and she's now 40, and she told CNN that she was experiencing symptoms of PTSD because of the physical and emotional abuse that she suffered when she was part of British Gymnastics. It's all very shocking. I think it is not a surprise. Some of the stuff that the gymnasts were saying a couple of years ago when they were making the accusations, this is kind of along the lines that they said, but it's just really horrific that such like children are getting, just playing sport and are having this kind of horrible culture kind of put upon them. We've talked a lot about abuse in sport, I think, while doing this podcast, because it is so prevalent, and we always just say, I think, you hope that these reviews lead to systematic change and changes in leadership and stuff that prevents this happening ever again, because it is so bad. Yeah, it really is. That was a 300-page review that concluded that they should have been, British Gymnastics should have been aware of bullying, harassment and excessive control that occurred in the training clubs between 2008 and 2020. I mean, it's extraordinary, as you say. These gymnasts are children, and that's the climate they're growing up in. As Claire Heaford said, it was too bizarre to be believed. But hopefully this revelation will affect some change. Nancy, are you hopeful that it will? Are you seeing any evidence that the tide is turning? Or is there any way to, get a better sense of what's happening within the sport now, because, all this is coming to light? I think there needs to be more change, I think, within the leadership. I think there has been changes to the leadership, but it's just like lower down than that. There's probably still coaches from this review that are still active in some area. So it's almost like a complete overhaul, I think, of the systems and the techniques and stuff that are used. I don't know if I am confident. I think all of these things being in the news and coming to light, and I know in this article Sport England are saying essentially it does, these federations, governing bodies, they have to make the changes, because otherwise they just won't get funding from people at Sport England. So yeah, hopefully, even if that is a really cynical reason to make a change, at least maybe that will kind of force something. So yeah, I wouldn't say I'm confident, but I'm hopeful. Yes.
Hopeful. Yeah. All right. Well, we'll keep you posted on that story and with any other stories along these lines. We want to move on to one sport now, which just cannot cut a break, and that is women's Nordic combined, because they're facing a challenge now when it comes to the Olympic Games. Nancy, bring us up to date with this, because we've read what our colleague Peggy Shin has wrote about in teamusa.org on this topic. They're facing an uphill battle to get women's Nordic combined in the Olympic program.
Yeah, so yeah, as we know, to be on the Olympic program these days, you have to promote gender equality, have essentially a 50-50 split in the sport. So Nordic combined traditionally has not really had any women's event. So it's always been a men's event at every Winter Olympic Games since 1924. There have been efforts made to outside of the Olympics to promote Nordic combined events for women. So a women's event appeared at the World Championships in 2021 for the first time. And there was also a proper World Cup season as well, which began in 2020. But yeah, there are fears that this is too underdeveloped and like this is essentially too early for Nordic combined. Well, for a women's event at the next Olympics, which is Milan and Cortina in 2026. So yeah, because essentially you need to have a 50-50 split to be on the Olympic program, there are now fears that Nordic combined will be completely dropped from the program. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens there. I know there's a lot of frustration about what's happened with Nordic combined, and it's been like pretty sexist attitudes that have stopped Nordic combined, being an event for women, where, just at the World Championships or just like a normal World Cup season or going all the way up to the Olympics. So yeah, I don't know really where I stand on this, because I think if it does stay in the Olympics, that's encouragement for them to keep pushing for women to be involved in Nordic combined. But at the same time, if it is kind of a half-hearted effort and it's underdeveloped, then should it be at the Olympics? I don't know. So yeah, it must be very frustrating for the women that are currently competing in Nordic combined there.
Yes, for sure. All right, well, it is the tennis season, of course. Another Grand Slam is upon us momentarily at Wimbledon, SW19 in London. And I know you're looking forward to that, Nancy. We've got Eastbourne going on right now on the south coast of England to get the ladies used to grass. But this story that you've got, it actually comes from the BBC, Wimbledon 2022, Periods, Tennis and the Tradition of Whites at SW19. How did you find this?
It was on the BBC Sport website. Just thought, it looked like an interesting read. Yeah, it is an interesting read. I think it's something that obviously the Wimbledon is known because you have to wear white uniform. And I think in recent years, there's been athletes have spoken more about white shorts are not really ideal because if you are on your period, you're scared that you're going to leak through and show. So yeah, there's the link between obviously that fear and then having to wear Wimbledon. And if you do get pretty far in Wimbledon, that's a 2-week period that you're competing. So like got 50% chance that you're going to be on your period. So they kind of like looked essentially at what people would, the fact that conversations around the menstrual cycle in sport were increasing, and they spoke to Heather Watson, the British tennis player, about it.
She talked about it, didn't she? Was it last year?
Well, no, it mentions in this piece, it was 2015. She was like one of the first tennis players to speak about the impact her period had on her performance. So she lost in the first round of the Australian Open in 2015. and on the day of her first round match, her period started, and she literally had said she had no energy or strength, and lost her first match, and was very open about that. And I think even though that's only 7 years ago, that was kind of one of the first times that's happened. Obviously, that's more now. I think we spoke a couple of weeks ago about Zheng Xinwen, the Chinese tennis player who had stomach cramps when she was playing Wiatek at the French Open. So it's, increasing more. But yeah, so Watson, I think obviously Watson has had previous in being quite open about it.
As well as Petra Kvitova, she talked about it before defending her title in 2015. Yeah,
so yeah, it was around that time I think people started speaking about it. But Watson was saying when the BBC spoke to her recently, that players do talk about it because of the all whites, and she says that she wants to play in all white and it's a great tradition and wouldn't want to change it, but then the stress is her period, but that she just plans her period around it. But then she says obviously so you can move your period with cramps and stuff, but then it's still a bit of an issue because the pill doesn't stop the symptoms that affects her game, so she gets bloated, cramps and fatigue, which obviously isn't great if you're playing. So yeah, it's interesting that obviously there's a kind of thought process and conversation around it that probably wouldn't be had if white wasn't the uniform. Obviously, people are still going to get the symptoms of it, but I don't know if players, I don't think it would work, but I don't think players would necessarily take the pill to skip their period for every Grand Slam or major tournament. So yeah, it's just quite an interesting read. I think as well, no one was saying necessarily that, I don't want to play in whites, but it's just a big consideration for female players when they're at Wimbledon.
Yeah, and of course this happens with Test cricketers too. The women wear whites in cricket.
Yeah, exactly. And, there's so many football shorts for teams are white as well, which I know a lot of players don't particularly like, but that still seems to be not at the forefront of kit designers' minds when they design kits.
Yeah, and in this article, it also speaks about, girls dropping out of sport because of this, and as well as making players feel comfortable, it could also help stop younger girls dropping out of the sport. And an Adidas survey from 2021 reported that 1 in 4 girls dropped out of sport in adolescence with fears of period leakage as a key reason. So, yeah, I think they're saying that they're allowed to wear coloured underwear, right, whatever they're comfortable underneath, but they have to wear white to play at Wimbledon. Yeah. All right. Well, thanks for finding that. There's a link to that whole story, again, on our website at wisports.com. What else do you have this week, Nancy? What are you doing? Are you playing football? Are you running?
I haven't run or played football this week, actually. I might try and get out tomorrow. I've just been kind of moving about a bit, quite a lot, so I haven't had too much time. But yeah, going to Leeds tomorrow for the England women are playing the Netherlands there on Friday night, so that's going to be a really fun game because Netherlands are defending champions. We have their old manager, really good indicator before the Euros begin at what state England are at. So, yeah, I'm really looking forward to that. And then, next week, Wimbledon starts as well.
Next week is Wimbledon, yeah.
Yeah, very exciting.
Yeah. Are you going?
I'm not. No, I'm not. I couldn't get accreditation. It's such a hard task. I haven't got tickets either. If I have a day off that falls for Jewish, in a good place, I may do the queue thing. But I've never been to Wimbledon. I really want to go.
Yes, you have to go. All right.
Euros,
I do envy you. If you do go, I'm very envious. I've had accreditation there. It's great fun to actually be working there.
Yeah, I can imagine it. It's definitely an ambition.
Yeah, there you go. On your bucket list.
Yeah, definitely on my bucket list.
All right. Well, that about wraps it up for this week then, Nancy.
It does, yeah. Another big week of women's sport.
Yeah, it is. And next week, as I say, we'll be kicking off Wimbledon, first few days of play when we record next Wednesday. And so until then, do follow us on social media at WIS Sports. And Nancy is at
I'm at Nancy_Gillan on Twitter, Nancy_Gillan_sport on Instagram, and I write for Give Me Sport Women, which is Give Me Sport W on Twitter.
And show notes at wisports.com. So until next week, from Nancy Gillan in not Pottersville. What did you say?
Finsbury Park. I will be staying in Pottersville, and then I'll be in Leeds.
And then you'll be in Leeds. Okay. Have a great weekend. Until next week. Thanks for listening, everybody. Goodbye for now.